Hello and welcome everyone. We're going to do a short video here on how to access IP Experts or Proctor Labs data center network racks. Now we have two different rack types available to us. We have the technology racks and then we have the mock lab racks. And the only real difference between the two, or differences I should say, as we'll see, is that within the mock lab rack we'll actually have full access to our Nexus 7K's admin VDC or the default VDC, as well as a real live UCS system rather than just the platform emulator that's in the technology racks. But I want to first go over just the basic steps of how we'd pretty much connect to any rack at IP Expert, but I'm going to do it predominantly focused on just the data center racks at this time. We'll explain some of the nuances that go on when accessing some of the data center equipment, because there are some graphical user interfaces that we do have to interact with as we study for this track, such as the UCS manager. Okay. Now the first thing we want to do is go out to proctorlabs.com. You should have an ID on there if you've already registered for these rack sessions. So what we're going to do is go ahead and log on with those credentials. It's usually in the form of an email address with a password that's already been provided to you or that you've reset through our management interface. Now, the next big step that everyone has to come in and do is form the VPN or establish the VPN connection. Now, I'm going to go out to Proctor Labs and we'll kind of go through this together, but what we're going to do is open up our web browser, and as you can see, I'm on proctorlabs.com. So what I want to do is go ahead and log in with my credentials, Jason Lund, or jlund at ipexpert.com, and we're going to click submit. Now you could go in here and tell it to remember you. If you're on a private PC, that would be okay. But we'll go ahead and hit submit, and we end up right here at the kind of Proctor Labs splash screen for each user. Now what we can see right now, because this button, go to current VRAC session, is available to me, and let's zoom in a little bit. I do have an ongoing VRAC session that is available to me. This is what you guys should see when you're going into your session. Now if you click on this, it's going to give you a EULA screen. So let's zoom back out here. Now we're going to click on agree to this EULA. Once we get here, what we want to do is click on Show VPN Instructions. If you haven't already downloaded Cisco's VPN client, for most Windows-based systems, it's going to be Cisco's native IPsec VPN client. You'll want to go to Cisco's website, have a CCO login, and download the Cisco VPN client for your particular system. If it's a 32-bit or a 64-bit system, download the correct client. And what we'll want to do here is click Show VPN Instructions. So no matter what type of client we're actually running, we're going to want to set up the profile that we need to use. And we can see that we have one side here for the route switch track, and then all other tracks are going to use these credentials here. So what I have done is I have my Cisco VPN client here, and what we're going to do is create a new profile. Hopefully this comes up. There it goes. So what we want to do here is name the connection entry. So in this instance, I'm going to say, this is Proctor Labs. I'm going to do just DC because that's the track that we're going to be doing here. We could do a description, but I'm not going to mess with that. What we want to do is put in a primary group host, or a primary host, I should say. And that's going to be vpn.proctorlabs.com. Or we could put in the IP address, which is right here, the 74.126.20.247. Either way you go, one's using DNS, it will resolve, or you could just put in the actual IP if you'd like. What you can also do here is put in the group name. So we can see here the group name is Proctor Group, so I'm just going to go ahead and copy that, Proctor Group. And then we have Proctor Labs _rental. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in twice. And now we're going to go to backup servers. I'm going to enable a backup server, and I'm going to add the second one. So the second one is going to be vpn2.proctorlabs.com. We'll click OK, and we'll save. Now to test it, all we have to do is double click on it, and we should get a username and password prompt that we can fill in. And again, this is going to be the username and password that we use to log into Proctor Labs. So what we want to do is go ahead and just type in jlund at ipexpert.com, and then my password. Not going to give that to you. And we should see Securing Communications channel, and then we should get a little pop-up dialog. just like this, that welcomes us to proctorlabs.com. Now, if we click OK here, that should finish the VPN connection that we'll need in order to connect to our individual racks. We can also verify that we have the proper routes in here by clicking Status, Statistics. And when we get to this screen, we'll see the VPN provided IP address that we have here. We can also look at route details and see what are the secured routes that we're using. And I can see that this is correct. 1010/16, then 10200.6/24. So we're looking good from a route perspective. Always something you might want to check, and as well as make sure you have some statistics here that you're getting both encrypts and decrypts from your VPN client. Okay. Once we're here, this is our main session screen. So we're going to see that what VRAC we're on. So in this particular instance, I'm on Data Center Rack, the Technology Pod number 45. Tell you your session start and end time. And your username, of course. You should know who you are at this point. But now we're ready to start controlling our devices. So I'm going to take you through, again, just the normal, let's just basic connections to our NXOS devices in this case. Once we click on the Connect tab and scroll down, we're going to see that we have a couple different MDSs available to us. We're going to have switches 1 and 2. Switches 1 and 2 in the data center racks are always going to be our Nexus 7K. So what we're going to see here is we have switch 1, switch 2, and then if we continue scrolling down, we're going to see that we have switches 3 and 4, which are our Nexus 5548 UPs. Now, we also have some other devices that we'll talk about as we go through this video, but in general, what we're going to do, if your browser supports the ability to telnet directly from it, i.e. your browser will open up your terminal emulator program for you, you can just go over here and click on this button to open up a session to your specific device, whatever you're clicking on. So we could tell Chrome in this instance to, launch an application in this case. But what I tend to do is I come into my whatever terminal emulator you're using, whether it's PuTTY, Secure CRT, you could open it up. And what you want to do is establish a telnet session to directly where it tells you. So this is saying open a telnet session, and I don't know if you guys could see that. Let's zoom in a little bit. It says open a telnet session to pod 45.proctorlabs.com on port 2001. So we're going to do exactly that, guys. We're going to open up our terminal emulator here, so in this case Secure CRT. I'm going to say telnet, and we're going to go to pod 45.proctorlabs.com on port 2001, and we're going to click connect. As you can see, we do get a splash screen. So what we want to do, the very first password, we're logging into the line of the terminal server that we have, because we are going directly into the console, but we're going through a terminal server. So I'm going to say jlund@ipexpert.com. Again, exactly what I logged into proctorlabs.com with. Then I'm going to put in my password. It'll tell me I'm on line number 1, and then I need to log into the device. Now, all devices by default at this current time are admin and IPExpert123 with a capital IP. So I'm going to type in admin and then capital IPExpert123. And as you see now, I have full access to MDS1 within pod 45. We can repeat this procedure for every single device that we have here. So you can see MDS1, 2. We're just going to end up going to different ports. The pod 45 or whatever pod you're on remains the same, but the port numbers are going to change. Okay? So as we go down through here, we're also going to see that we have SSH sessions we can open up to our particular Nexus 7 case. Again, these are all going to be SSH sessions. So we're not going to be able to telnet, we're not going to be able to have direct console access, because our Nexus 7Ks in these instances are actually VDCs on common 7Ks. So what you're going to be doing is SSHing to your individual management interface within your VDC, within your pod. So again, we have to be VPN'd in to do that. That is one of the instances where we do need to be VPN'd in order to complete that operation. So again, all we would do is come in and say SSH and go to the IP address that they have listed within your Proctor Labs portal. Now, the 5Ks are going to be exactly the same. We're going to have a direct console connection to them, and we're going to be able to go to their individual console port numbers through the terminal server that we have available to you guys on proctorlabs.com. We also have a couple other machines on here that we'll get into in just a minute, but I wanted to go over some of the other basic functions within the pods because we're going to be using, as I mentioned before, some different GUI applications that are available to us within the data center track. Again, like UCS Manager. In the technology racks, we're going to have the platform emulator. We're also going to have Windows Server 2008, kind of a jump box in case your Java version isn't supported. So let's get into that stuff. Now, most of our connections are going to be made just like I showed you, with the exception, guys, of the Nexus 1000V virtual supervisor module and the Nexus 7K. For those devices, we will have to be VPN'd in and we will have to SSH to the IP addresses that are provided to you within that controls page. Now, the main difference between the technology racks and the MockLab rack is the fact that within the MockLab rack, you're going to have full access to an admin VDC, meaning you can change the VDC interface allocations, you can delete the VDCs, you could create a storage VDC. We do not have that ability inside of the technology racks. Inside of the technology racks, you don't have access to the admin or default VDC. You only have SSH-based access to your individual virtual device context. Okay, so that's one of the key differences between these two pods. The other one is that we don't have a full UCS system within the technology racks. We have what we call the UCS platform emulator. So we run the UCS manager no matter which side of the house, whether we have a real UCS, whether we have a UCS PE, we're still running the UCS manager. What you're going to find is that we may not have the proper Java version installed on our local machine to go in and run the UCS platform emulator. If that is the case with you, and typically anything over Java version 7 will not let us run UCS Manager. Okay, you have to be running like 645 or something kind of crazy like that. So it really depends on you and your individual computer. Do you have the ability to downgrade the Java if you need to? A lot of security restrictions within organizational PCs won't let us do that. So in those specific instances, we've provided a terminal server for you to RDP to in order to get the UCSM functionality. So I want to show you some of the nuances with that. And what we're going to do is go back to our screen here. And as we can see, I have a UCS PE on 1010, 210, 135, and 145 on this one. And then I also have a Windows Server 2008 box on 1010, 210, 125. So what we could do, I could click, since I'm VPN'd in, I could click directly on the UCS PE button here. And what it's going to do is it's going to launch and try to open the UCS platform emulator for me. We'll click on the other one just in case. There we go, looks like one loaded. So this will be the UCS Manager interface for the platform emulator that we'll be able to get to. Now from here, we could launch UCS Manager just like we could with a regular UCS. Or if we're having issues with possibly logging into this box, what I always recommend doing is going down here to Restart and performing a factory reset of these individual nodes. Now again, we could click factory reset, we could come in and just reset the UCSM database. Either will work, we just want to check this radio button and click the button and it would go ahead and reset. Now it would take a couple minutes in those cases to come back up, but when it does come back up, we'd come back to this UCS Manager screen on Home and we could launch UCS Manager from here. Again, not a big deal, but just some small nuances that we have to work with when we're using things like a GUI interface that uses Java underneath. Now, what's eventually going to happen is we're going to be presented with a login box for UCS. So what we're going to see is that it downloads a little web start dialog, kind of like this. And then it's going to come up with an individual box that we can log in with, just username and password. Now within that username and password box, we should be able to use absolutely anything. We could say blah blah, cookie cookie, cookie monster, anything, any combination should work within that username and password box. So as soon as it pulls up over here, whoops, we'll get there it goes. So now I have this this login box, and as you can see, I'm going to type in blah blah. And it should log in, and if it doesn't, what I would do is go down there and reset the UCSM database or perform a factory default from the Restart tab down there at the bottom. So right now it's saying on my other screen here that the initialization is in progress. So it looks like it's going to work. You might get a Java I/O exception failure as well, and that would normally mean that your Java version is probably too updated to run the UCS manager. And as you can see, I do have a full screen here, just like I would with regular UCS. But you might see a Java I/O exception. In that case, you're going to need to downgrade your Java. I always prefer to go to 6.45. Some other people, you can go higher than that. Anything over 7 is going to start throwing that error. So if you do have that same error kicking up, what I recommend you do is use the built-in terminal server that we have provided to you from within Proctor Labs. So what you see here is a Windows Server 2008. We put the username and password there for you as well. We'll just want to RDP to that IP address. So in this case, 10.10.210.125. We should be able to click connect. In this instance, I'll say I want to use another account. We'll say administrator and IP expert 123, and it should let us log in. And then we could open the UCS platform emulator from within this terminal server. Again, we have the correct version of Java running from within here. You could also use our built-in PuTTY application. Whatever you want to do, we have the ability to do it from this terminal server if you so choose to go that route. Now again, the UCS platform emulator and the UCS PE are very similar. We can do 95% of our tasks from within the platform emulator that we can do in the RealBox. Some of the key differences between the two is, one, we don't have a lot of the NXOS shell that we can go into in terms of CLI for verification. Of course, we can't verify that we have working uplinks or working fiber channel uplinks from the platform emulator, nor can we boot an actual server in the platform emulator. But all of the settings that you can go in there and tweak, you can do from the PE. You just can't go in and verify a lot of that stuff via the command line like a lot of us like to go in and do. Now, some of the final things I want to tell you guys about are the SIMC, okay, because each pod, whether it's the Mock Lab or the technology racks, have UCS C-series servers within them. So you have the ability to access the SIMC. We give you the IP address to go to, and again, all you have to do is click on that, and it should open the actual SIMC connection to that device. If it doesn't load, which is kind of looking the way this one is doing right now, this is a development pod, but what you're going to do is log in with the username admin and the password, both all lowercase, and that's going to give you SIMC access to that particular C-series within your individual pods. We also have VSMs available to us, which are virtual supervisor modules in the Nexus 1000V hierarchy of switches. So of course we have the VSMs and the VIMs. With the VSMs, you're able to SSH, and again you SSH to these IP addresses, so you need to be VPN'd in order to do that. But we provided these IP addresses to you. Again, you're going to use the same default credentials, admin and capital IP, lowercase expert 123, to log in and configure those. We do not currently at this time have a vCenter within there for the VSMs to actively connect to. So you won't be able to mess with both the VSM side and the vCenter side or see that integration. But what you can do is go in there and create all the port profiles, verify your work through the use of the NXOS CLI built into the VSMs. Beyond that, there are some other items that we have troubleshooting-wise you can use within our pods. What you'll see is that we have the ability to go in there and power cycle the devices. This is going to be done, again, in your Proctor Labs webpage on the Power Management tab here on the far right. So if we scroll over and click on Power Management, we'll see that we have the ability to power cycle. Again, you don't have the ability to power cycle the 7K because that would ruin it for a lot of people, but you do have the ability to go in and power cycle your MDSs, your terminal servers, and your Nexus 5K devices. You can also go in and revert the configurations on a lot of your devices by clicking on the Control tab, and in here we can go through and revert each switch back to its intended factory default setting from this web page. What we don't want to do is click on revert multiple times for the same device because our interface queues these up. So if you need to revert everything, you can click on revert entire pod here, or if there's a specific device that you'd like to revert, we can go through on a one-by-one or a case-by-case basis and revert those individual devices from within our control panel. We also have the ability to clear the lines, so via the ones that we do have console access to, we can clear the lines on the terminal server just in case, for instance, we might be locked out on one. What you'll typically see with that is, notice I have a current connection to pod 45.proctorlabs.com. This was to the MDS on port 2001 again. If I tried to copy this or clone this session, we're going to see that the remote system refused the connection. So if you ever get that message, you may want to go in and clear the line for that specific device, like we'll do right here. So if I come in to MDS1 and say clear line, it's going to go through its little process, clear the line. And then I should be able to come back in here. It should be clearing this line. I should be able to come in here in just a moment and retry this line, and it will actually connect. Again, you probably want to wait until it fully says cleared over here, which it does now. I should be able to come in and access that device just like that. So we can clear the lines, we can revert the pods. All of it works. If you do have any trouble, again, always contact support@ipexpert.com. These guys are fast, they're efficient, and they'll be able to help you out within minutes of your ticket actually hitting the queue in most cases. So if you ever have any questions, feel free to email support or even myself at jlund@ipexpert.com. I'd be more than happy to give you guys a personal overview of our racks and how to access them. The last thing I want to mention is that we do have some diagrams available to you through the Proctor Labs website. If we click on VRAC details up here at the very top of our screen, and then we go to the bottom here and click CCIE Data Center VRACs, we will see that we have both technology and mock lab racks. Whichever button you select is going to display the diagrams for that rack. So in this case I have the technology racks, and I can scroll down and I could look at the individual diagrams. So we could pull up all 4 pods in one big diagram. We could come down here and pull up an individual pod, which would be what I would do if I were accessing the racks. And we're able to see the different port types, port numbers, that interconnect all the devices within our individual pods. So what's kind of neat about this is I've recently went through and I've color-coded a lot of these. So if you see from a 7-case perspective, because these would be the 7Ks in our diagram, we can see that we have the F-series modules on port module 4. I've color-coded all of those in orange so that you guys can represent the unified fabric topology, or can see the unified fabric topology that you'll be dealing with when you're accessing our pods. But we can do these on a case-by-case basis, and we can also go in and we can see each of our mock lab racks, or our mock lab rack, and you can view the same topology both from a physical perspective and the unified fabric perspective from within this single interface on proctorlabs.com. So again, just go through there and locate the pertinent diagrams. You can copy and paste those off to a different program that maybe you can do a screen capture on. You can write and draw links on top of it, or kind of create them or use them as an overlay. But all this is accessible from proctorlabs.com, and again, if you guys ever have any problems with it, feel free to let us know at support@ipexpert.com, or even myself at jlund@ipexpert.com. Thanks for watching.